Hi everybody! So today I'm going to make you a video about the discussion post that's coming due. You can see that coming up on the 16th on Thursday, you'll have this reflection on the writing process discussion post due. So I want to talk a little bit about that and walk you through the different steps. So if you go to the actual assignment, it will tell you here that you are going to be posting on a discussion board, answering these questions, and responding to a peer, which is the typical format that we have in the discussion boards. So when you check out what's coming for us, it's these 4 questions that I want you to answer. So you will answer them. They are on the discussion post. This is the description of the task, but in order to post on the board, you'll go to the discussion board, reflection on writing process. And you'll start a new thread. And you can start a new thread and just answer those 4 questions, just numbered. We're going to say 1 to 2 sentences for each. So let's go back and look at those questions. When you're done, you'll post it, it'll go there. And then you'll respond to a peer. Okay. So these are the questions that I want you to answer. And like I said, you can just do 1, 2, 3, 4. What was the hardest part of the writing process for you in Unit 1? What tip, habit, strategy, or resource was most useful in helping you to overcome or navigate that stage of the writing process? What part of the writing process was the simplest for you to navigate in Unit 1? What tip, habit, strategy, or resource was most useful in making that stage of the writing process a personal success? Okay. So one thing that I want to make sure is very clear first is what the writing process is. You guys have actually just done it. So if you think back to what we've done over the past 2 weeks in order, you're going to get an idea of the writing process. The first couple assignments you had due in both 101 and 11 were brainstorming. You thought a little bit about critical thinking in you. You thought about critical thinking in a time that you used a characteristic of critical thinking. That's brainstorming. That's the first step of the writing process. The next thing you did was you wrote a thesis. You created a thesis from your brainstorming. You came up with a thesis statement that explained one personal experience, a specific personal experience, and a way in which that experience taught you about critical thinking, whether you displayed a skill or characteristic of a critical thinker or whether you didn't and you should have. It was an example of you and critical thinking. So we've got the brainstorming process, and then we've got that you wrote a thesis. And then if you think back to the document you turned in of the revised thesis, you revised your thesis. After that, you wrote an outline, and then you wrote a draft. Those are the steps that we've taken, and this is all part of the writing process. So when the question asks you, what was the hardest part of the writing process for you in Unit 1? Just look back at these things and ask yourself, which of these things was the most difficult? Was it brainstorming? Was it writing a thesis? Was it then getting feedback and realizing you needed to revise your thesis? Was it writing an outline? Was it writing a draft? What part of the writing process was the most difficult paper? We'll call this, because we haven't written the finalized draft quite yet. Brainstorming, writing a thesis, revising your thesis, outlining rough draft. Those are the stages of the writing process we've done. So what you need to do for this particular assignment is start by picking the hardest part and explaining how you use something to get through it. And then the next part is to pick the part that was the simplest and explain why you thought that was the simplest. That's basically what you're doing. So if we were to follow this, let's pull this up, and I will post a copy of this writing process for you. There will be a copy of that available for you so that you can look back on it and choose one. So let's say I'm trying to answer these questions. Maybe not so huge. Let's say I'm trying to answer these questions, and I'm going to choose brainstorming. I'm going to say that brainstorming was the hardest part for me. So my answer to the first question is going to be in a complete sentence that uses part of the question, so it's clear to the reader, even if they haven't read the question. I don't want to see like that, because we're writing in complete sentences. So the hardest part of the writing process for me in Unit 1 an idea. And like I said, write 1 to 2 sentences. So explain why. Why was this the hardest part of the writing process for me in Unit 1? I had, or I'll say, it's easy to come up personal experience struggled to relate it to critical skill. So then maybe what I'm going to say, then the next question is, what tip, habit, strategy, or resource was most useful in helping you to overcome or navigate that stage of the writing process? Did you ask me? Did you go back and look at some of the texts that we had? Did you go back and watch a video? What helped you get past this difficult part of the writing process? So I'm going to say watching video. What is thesis? Whatever. In this case, and I'm going back and I'm checking my spelling. That did get better. In this, I'm saying, okay, so I went back and watched the video. What is a thesis statement? That's the resource that helped me realize that what I have been doing with my brainstorming was only half of the equation. And that's what I'm going to explain here. And for the next set of questions, you're going to do the exact same thing, except you're going to pick the easiest, and you're going to explain why it was easy from the get-go. 1 to 2 sentence answering all 4 of those questions, and all of the questions are asking you about the writing process. These are the stages of the writing process. So these are the different parts of the writing process. So you're going to want, from this list, going to want to pick the one that was the hardest to answer the first and second questions, and the one that for you was the easiest to answer the third and fourth questions. And that's what you need to do on the discussion board. And then respond to a peer before Thursday at midnight.